Unit 1, Diversity in the Living World. Biology is the science of life forms and living processes. The living world comprises an amazing diversity of living organisms. Early man could easily perceive the difference between inanimate matter and living organisms. Early man defined some of the inanimate matter, wind, sea, fire, etc., and some among the animals and plant. A common feature of all such forms of inanimate and animate objects was the sense of awe or fear that they evoked. The description of living organisms, including human beings, began much later in the human history. Societies which indulged in anthropocentric view of biology could register limited progress in a biological knowledge. Systematic and monumental description of life forms brought in, out of necessity, detailed systems of identification, nomenclature, and classification. The biggest spin off of such studies was the recognition of the sharing of similarities among living organisms, both horizontally and vertically. That all present day living organisms are related to each other and also to all organisms that ever lived on the earth was a revelation which humbled man and led to cultural movements for conservation of biodiversity. In the following chapters of this unit, you will get a description including classification of animals and plants from a taxonomist perspective. Ernest Mayr. Born on 5 July 1904 in Campton, Germany, Ernest Mayr, the Harvard University evolutionary biologist who has been called the Darwin of 20th century, was one of the 100 greatest scientists of all time. Mayr joined Harvard's Faculty of Arts and Sciences in 1953 and retired in 1975, assuming the title Alexander Agassiz Professor of Zoology Emeritus. Throughout this early 80th years career, his research spanned ornithology. Ornithology is the study of birds, taxonomy, zoo, geography, evolution, systematics, and the history and philosophy of biology. He almost single handedly made the origin of species diversity the central question of the evolutionary biology that it is today. He also pioneered the currently accepted definition of biological species. Mayer was awarded the three prizes widely regarded as the Triple Crown of Biology: the Bolzan Prize in 1983, the International Prize for Biology in 1994, and Crafoord Prize in 1999. Mayers died at the age of 100. 2004. Chapter 1, The Living World. How wonderful is the living world! The wide range of the living types is amazing. The extraordinary habitats in which we find living organisms, be it cold mountains, deciduous forests, oceans, freshwater lakes, deserts, or hot springs, leave us speechless. The beauty of galloping horse of the migrating birds, the valley of flowers, or the attacking sharks evoke you and a deep sense of wonder. The ecological conflict and cooperation among members of a population and among populations of a community, or even the molecular traffic inside a cell, make us deeply reflect on what indeed is life. This question has two implicit questions with it. The first is a technical one and seeks answer to what living is as opposed to the non living, and second is a philosophical one and seeks answer to what the purpose of the life is. As scientists, we shall not attempt answering the second question. We will try to reflect on what is living. What is living? When we try to define living, we conventionally look for the distinctive characteristics exhibited by living organisms. Growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment, and mount a suitable response come to our mind immediately as a unique feature of living organisms. One can add a few more features like metabolism, ability to self replicate, self organize, interact, and emergence to his list. Let us try to understand each of these. All living organisms grow, increase in mass, and increase in number of individuals are twin characteristics of growth. A multicellular organism grows by a cell division. In plant, the growth by cell division occur continuously throughout their lifespan. In animals, the growth is seen only up to certain age. However, cell division occurs in certain tissues to replace lost cells. Unicellular organisms grow by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro cultures by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. In majority of the higher animals and plants, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. One must remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. Non-living objects also grow in if we take increase in body mass as a criterion for growth. Mountains, boulders, and sand mounds too grow. However, this kind of growth exhibited by a non-living object is by accumulation of materials on the surface. A living organism growth is from inside. Growth therefore cannot be taken as a defining property of living organisms. Conditions under which it can be observed in all living organisms have to be explained, and then we understand that it is a characteristic of living systems. A dead organism does not grow. Reproduction likewise is a characteristic of living organism. In a multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to the production of progeny possessing features more or less similar to those of parents. Invariably and implicitly, we refer to sexual reproduction. Organisms reproduce by asexual means also. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to the millions of the asexual spores they produce. In lower organisms like yeast and hydra, we observe budding. In planaria flatforms, we observe true regeneration. That is, a fragmenting organism regenerates the lost part of its body and becomes a new organism. The fungi, the filamentous algae, the protonema of mosses all easily multiply by fragmentation. When it comes to unicellular organisms like bacteria, unicellular algae, or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with growth, that is, increase in number of cells. We have already defined growth as equivalent to increase in cell number or mass. Hence, we notice that it is a single-celled organisms. We are not clear about the usage of these two terms, growth and reproduction. Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce: mules, sterile, worker bees, infertile, human couples, etc. Hence, reproduction also cannot be an inclusive defining characteristic of living organisms. Of course, no living object is capable of reproducing or replicating by itself. Another characteristic of life is metabolism. All living organisms are made of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, sizes, functions, etc., are constantly being made and changed into some other biomolecules. These conversions are chemical reactions or metabolic reactions. These are thousands of metabolic reactions occurring simultaneously inside all living organisms, be they unicellular or multicellular. All plants, animals, fungi, and microbes exhibit metabolisms. The sum total of all the chemical reactions occurring in our body is metabolism. No non-living object exhibits metabolisms. Metabolic reactions can be demonstrated outside the body in a cell-free systems. An isolated metabolic reactions outside the body of an organism performed in a test tube is neither living nor non-living. Hence, while metabolism is a defining feature of all living organisms without exception, isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are non-living things but surely living reactions. Hence, cellular organism of the body is the defining feature of life forms. Perhaps the most obvious and technically complicated feature of all living organisms is this ability to sense these surroundings or environment and respond to this environmental stimuli, which could be physical, chemical, or biological. We sense our environment through our sense organs. Plants respond to external factors like light, water, temperature, other organisms, pollutants, etc. All organisms from the prokaryotes to the most complex eukaryotes can sense and respond to environmental cues. Photoperiod affects reproduction in seasonal breeders, both plants and animals. All organisms handle chemical entering their bodies. All organisms, therefore, are aware of their surroundings. Human being is the only organism who is aware of himself, that is self-conscious. Consciousness, therefore, becomes the defining property of living organisms. When it comes to human beings, it is more difficult to define the living state. We observe patients lying in coma in hospitals, virtually supported by machines which replace heart and lung. The patient is otherwise brain dead. The patient had no self-consciousness. Are you sure that patients would come back to normal life, living or non-living? In higher classes, you will come to know that all the living phenomena are due to underlying interactions. Properties of the tissues are not present in the constituted cells but arise as a result of interactions among the constituent cells. Similarly, properties of cellular organelles are not present in the molecular constituents of organelle, but arise as a result of interactions among the molecular components comprising the organelles. These interactions result in emergent properties at a high level of organization. This phenomena is true in the hierarchy of organizational complexity at all levels. Therefore, we can say that living organisms are self replicating, evolving, and self regulating interactive systems capable of responding to external stimuli. Biology is the story of life on Earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organism on Earth. All living organisms, present, past, and future, are linked to one another by sharing of the common genetic material, but to varying degrees. Diversity in the living world. If you look around, you will see a large variety of living organisms, be it potted plants, insects, birds, your pets, or other animals and plants. There are also several organisms that you cannot see with the naked eye, but they are all around you. If you were to increase that area that you might observe, that you make observation in, the range and the variety of organisms that you see would increase. Obviously, if you were to visit a dense forest, you would probably see much greater number and kinds of living organism in it. Each different kind of plant, animals, or organisms that you see represent a species. The number of species that are known and described range between 1.7 to 1.8 million. This refers to biodiversity, or the number and types of organisms present on the earth. We should remember that as we explore new areas and even old ones, new organisms are continuously being identified. As stated earlier, there are millions of plants and animals in the world. We know that plants and animals in our own area by their local names. These local names would vary from place to place. Even within a country, probably you would recognize the confusion that would be created if we do not find out ways and means to talk to each other to refer to organisms we are talking about. Hence, there is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms, such that a particular organism is known by the name all over the world. This process is called nomenclature. Obviously, nomenclature or naming is the only possible when the organism is described correctly and we know to what organisms the name is attached to. This is called identification. In order to facilitate the study, number of scientists have established procedures to assign a scientific name to each known organism. This is acceptable to biologists all over the world. For plants, scientific names are based on the agreed applications and principles and criteria, which are provided in International Code of Botanical Nomenclature (ICBN). You may ask, how are animals named? Animal taxonomists have evolved International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. The scientific names ensure that each organism has only one name. Description of any organism should enable the person in any part of the world to arrive at the same time. They also ensure that such a name would not have been used by any other organism. Biologists follow universally accepted principles to provide scientific names to known organisms. Each name has two components, the generic name and the specific epithet. This system of providing a name with two components is called binomial nomenclature. This naming system given by Carlos Linnaeus is being practiced by biologists all over the world. This naming system using a two-word format was found convenient. Let us take the example of mango to understand the way of providing scientific names better. The scientific name of mango is written as Mangifera indica. Let us know how it is a binomial name. In this name, Mangifera represents the genus, while indica is a particular species of a specific epithet. Other universal rules of nomenclature are as follows. Biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics. They are Latinized or derived from Latin irrespective of the region. The first word is the biological name represents the genus, while the second component denotes the specific epithet. Third, both the words in the biological name, when written, are specifically separately underlined or printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. Fourth, the first word denoting the genus starting with a capital letter, while the specific epithet starts with a small letter. It can be illustrated with the example of Mangifera indica. Name of the author appears after the specific epithet, that is at the end of biological name, and is written in an abbreviated form. Example, Mangifera indica, LINN. It indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus. Since it is nearly impossible to study all living organisms, it is necessary to devise some means to make this possible. This process is called classification. Classification is the process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters. For example, we can easily recognize groups such as plants or animals or cats and insects. The moment we use any of these terms, we associate certain characteristics with the organism in that group. What image do you see when you think of a dog? Obviously, each one of us will see dogs, talking dogs, है ना? And not cats. Now, if we were to think of LSTSians, we know that we were talking about similarly. Suppose we were to say mammals. You would also of course, think of animals with external ears and body hair. Likewise, in the plants, if we try to talk of wheat, the picture in each of the mind will be of wheat plant, not of rice or any other plant. Hence, all these dogs, cats, mammals, wheat, rice, plants, animals, etc., are convenient categories we use to study organisms. The scientific term for these categories is taxa. Here, you must recognize that taxa can indicate categories at very different levels. Plants also form a taxa. Wheat is also a taxa. Similarly, animals, mammals, dogs are all taxa. But you know that a dog is a mammal and mammals are animals. Therefore, animals, mammals, and dogs represent taxa at different levels. Hence, based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into taxa. This process of classification is called taxonomy. External and internal structure, along with the structure of cell development and processes and ecological information of organisms, are essential and form the basis of modern taxonomic studies. Hence, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the processes that are basic to taxonomy. Taxonomy is not something new. Human beings have been always interested in knowing more and more about various kinds of organisms, particularly with reference to their own use. In early days, human beings needed to find sources for their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. Hence, the earliest classification were based on the uses of the various organisms. Human beings were since long not only interested in knowing about different kinds of organisms and the diversity, but also the relationship among them. This branch of study was referred to as systematics. The word systematics is derived from the Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of organisms. Linnaeus used Systema Naturae as the title of his publication. The scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification. Systematics takes into account evolutionary relationship between organisms. Taxonomic categories. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of steps in which each step represents a rank or category. Since the category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called the taxonomic category, and all the categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. Each category referred to a unit of classification, in fact, represents a rank and is commonly termed as taxon. Taxonomic categories and hierarchy can be illustrated by an example. Insects represents a group of organisms sharing common features like three pairs of jointed legs. It means insects are recognizable concrete objects which can be classified and thus were given a rank or category. Can you name such as the groups of organisms? Remember, group represent category. Category further denotes rank. Each rank or taxon in fact represents a unit of classification. These taxonomic groups slash categories are distinct biological entities and not merely morphological aggregates. Taxonomical studies of all known organisms have led to a development of common categories such as kingdom, phylum, division, class, order, family, genus, species. All organisms, including those in the plants and animal kingdoms, have species as the lowest category. Now, the question you may ask is how to place an organism in various categories. The basic requirement is the knowledge of characters of individual or group of organisms. This helps in the identifying similarities and dissimilarities among the individuals of the same kind of organism as well as of other kind of organisms. Species. Taxonomical studies consider a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities as a species. One should be able to distinguish one species from other closely related species based on the distinct morphological differences. Let us consider Mangifera indica, Solanum tuberosum, and Panthera leo. All these named indica, tuberosum, and leo represent the species epithet, while the first word Mangifera, Solanum, and Panthera are the genera and represent another high level of taxon or category. Each genus may have one or more than one specific epithets representing different organisms, but having morphological similarities for different For example, Panthera has another specific epithet called tigris, and Solanum includes species like Nigrum and Milaguna. Human beings belonging to the species sapiens, which is grouped in the genus Homo. The specific name, thus, for human beings is written as Homo sapiens. Genus 1.3.2. Genus comprises a group of related species which has more characters in common in comparison to species of another genera. We can say that genera are aggregates of close related species. For example, potato and brinjal are two different species, but both belong to the genus Solanum. Lion, leopard, and tiger, with several common features, are all species of genus Panthera. This genus differs from another genus Felis, which includes cats. Family. The next category, family, has a group of related genera with still less number of similarities as compared to genus and species. Families are characterized on the basis of the both vegetative and reproductive features of plant species. Among plants, for example, three different genera Solanum, Putina, and Datura are placed in the family Solanaceae. Among animals, for example, genus Panthera comprising lion, tiger, leopard is put along with genus Felis cat in the family Felidae. Similarly, if you observe the features of a cat and a dog, you will find some similarities and some differences as well. They are separated into two different families, Felidae and Canidae, respectively. Order. You have seen earlier that categories like species, genus, and families are based on the number of similar characteristics. Generally, order and other higher taxonomic categories are identified based on the aggregates of characters. Order, being a higher category, is the assemblage of families which exhibit a few similar characteristics. The similar characters are less in number as compared to different genera included in a family. Plant families like Convoluceae, Solanaceae are included in order Polymeales, mainly based as the floral characters. The animals like Carnivora includes families like Felidae and Canidae. Class. This category includes related orders. For example, order Primata comprises monkey, gorilla, and gibbon is placed in class Mammalia along with the order Carnivora that includes animals like tiger, cat, and dog. Class Mammalia has other orders also. Phylum. Classes comprising animals like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, along with mammals constitute the next higher category called phylum. All these based on the common features like presence of notochord and dorsal hollow neural system are included in phylum Chordata. In case of plants, classes with a fewer number characteristics are assigned to higher category called division. Kingdom. All animals belonging to various phyla are assigned to the highest category called kingdom, Animalia, in the classification system of animals. The kingdom Plantae, on the other hand, is the distinct and comprises all plants from various divisions. Henceforth, we will refer to these groups as animals and plant kingdom. The taxonomic categories from species to kingdom have been shown in ascending order starting with the species in figure 1.1. These are broad categories. However, taxonomists have also developed subcategories in this hierarchy to facilitate more sound and scientific placement of various taxa. Look at the hierarchy in figure 1.1. Can you recall the basis of arrangement? Say, for example, as we go higher from species to kingdom, the number of common characteristics goes on decreasing. Lower the taxa, more are the characteristics that the member within the taxon share. Higher the category, greater is the difficulty of determining the relationship to another taxa at the same level. Hence, the problem of the classification become more complex. Table 1.1 indicates the taxonomic categories to which some of the common organisms like housefly, mango, and wheat belong. Taxonomical aids. Taxonomical studies of various species of plants, animals, and other organisms are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in general in knowing our bioresources and their biodiversity. These studies would require correct classification and identification of organisms. Identification of organisms requires intensive laboratory and field studies. That collection of actual specimen Sorry, the collection of actual specimens of plant and animal species is essential and is the prime source of taxonomical studies. These are also fundamental to studies and essential for training in systematics. It is used for classification of an organisms and the information gathered is also stored along with the specimens. In some cases, the specimen is preserved for future studies. Biologists have established certain procedure and techniques to store and preserve the information as well as the specimen. Some of these are explained to help you understand the usage of these aids. Herbarium. Herbarium is a storehouse of collected plant specimens that are dried, pressed, and preserved on sheets. Further, these sheets are arranged according to the universally accepted system of classification. These specimens, along with their description on herbarium sheets, become a storehouse of respiratory for future use. The herbarium sheets also carry a label providing information about date and place of class of collection, English, local, and botanical names, family, characters, names, etc. Herbaria also serve as a quick referral systems in taxonomical studies. Botanical gardens. These specialized gardens have collections of living plants for reference. Plant species in these gardens are grown for identification purposes, and each plant is labeled indicating its botanical scientific name and its family. The famous botanical gardens are at Kew, England, Indian Botanical Garden, Howrah, India, and at National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, India. Museum. Biological museums are generally set up in the educational institutes such as schools and colleges. Museums have collections of preserved plant and animal specimens for study and reference. Specimens are preserved in the containers or jars in preservative solutions. Plants and animal specimens may also be preserved as a dry specimens. Insects are preserved in insect boxes after collecting, killing, and pinning. Larger animals like birds and mammals are usually stuffed and preserved. Museums often have collection of skeletons and animals too. Zoological parks. These are the places where wild animals are kept in protected environmental under human care, which enables us to learn about the food habits and behavior. All animals in a zoo are provided as far as possible the conditions similar to these natural habitats. Children love visiting these parks, commonly called zoos. Key. Key is another taxonomical aid used for identification of plants and animals based on the similarities and dissimilarities. The keys are based on the contrasting characters, generally in a pair called a couplet. It represents the mate choice between the two opposite options. These results in the acceptance of only one and rejection of the other. Each statements in the key is called the let. Separate taxonomic keys are required for each taxonomic category such as family, genus. For identification purposes, keys are generally analytical in nature. Flora, manuals, monographs, and catalogs are some another means of recording descriptions. These also help in correct identification. Flora contains the actual account of habitat and distribution of plants of given area. These provide the index to the plant species found in a particular area. Manuals are useful in providing information for identification of names of species found in area. Monographs contain information on any one taxon.